So when the starting 11 was announced for the Crystal Palace game, there I was tearing my hair out, and I tried to keep calm about it, but I was thinking, no way have you resorted to Kai Havertz in midfield again. I was so disappointed, but I was wrong, and Turkish was rightly saying on the watch along, let's just wait and see what happens, and he was spot on, because what Arteta did was something none of us expected from a system perspective, from a tactical setup. The shape looked different, and actually went back to something he did a year ago, or over a year ago, about a year and a quarter, year and a half ago, when we played Nottingham Forest on the opening day of the 23-24 campaign. A tactic that was, and obviously I didn't watch football back then, but was supposedly synonymous with Johan Cruyff's Barcelona, with Pep Guardiola at the base in a 3-4-3, but that 4 was a diamond shape. And we did a whole video breaking it down on Tactical Insight back then, and I actually linked the video in the description below if you want to skip to that segment and kind of see what Graham and I spoke about. But it's really interesting because it's something that Graham Potter had tried doing at Brighton at times as well, and I think it's this system that in theory sounds great, but Mikel Arteta and Arsenal have a very particular way of being out of shape, a 4-4-2 out of possession, that it makes me wonder whether this is actually a long-term idea for Arsenal, because I don't think it's quite as easy to execute as we saw in this game against Palace on Saturday. But let me just remind you of the starting 11 as we saw it, because this was released, the AFTV graphic, and like I said, I saw Havertz in midfield, and I thought, oh no, this is a problem. So how did I expect it to look? Well, let's go firstly to the tactical pad. We've got the 4-3-3 as a kind of, as a 4-3-3 is laid out on paper. Out of possession, expect Ødegaard to push up and make it a 4-4-2, but I thought this would be us in possession. And I thought it would be Kai Havertz trying to get a bit closer to Jesus, but Lewis Skelly inverting. I thought, well, maybe Lewis Skelly with his ability on the ball would help unlock Kai Havertz, and then you've got someone making runs off Martinelli, and you think all these things. The reality is we didn't go for the box midfield. We didn't go for the 3-2-4-1 shape. We went for something a lot more like this. Now, what this shape for me was all about was essentially looking at everyone's strengths and getting them into the areas of the pitch that they're most comfortable in. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, you've got the perfect balance in terms of a build-up back three there. You then got Partey in the 6, who's starting in midfield and ultimately staying in midfield. So there he is at the base, able to try and link up play. But he's got Ødegaard and Lewis Skelly, two really technical players either side of him, with Kai Havertz in the 10. Now, what was interesting about Kai Havertz is at times he was floating to try and link up on the end of some Ødegaard passes. At times he was sort of running beyond, but so often he was picking up the ball in behind Gabby Jesus, who would drop into space to try hold up the ball. Havertz would pick up second balls or run beyond him, and you sort of had this sort of range from Kai Havertz. Look, I don't think Kai Havertz played that well on the day, if I'm honest. I don't really think he kind of looked particularly sensational, that we unlocked a particularly great Havertz, but I thought, functionally it worked great. You got Martinelli and Saka high and wide with plenty of support from Ødegaard and Lewis Skelly. You've got that midfield 3 in shape, but you've also got Havertz, like I said, playing off Jesus in that second striker role, and Jesus is, apart from getting the 2 goals, which was really good, his kind of hold-up play is always going to be more useful when you've got a runner like Kai Havertz behind him too. Now, Kai Havertz, we can see from his touch map on who scored, was shooting from right to left here. We can see that Kai Havertz was all over the place here. This is just further evidence that this was not a left 8 position for him. Yes, out of possession, he had to drop deep and go next to Partey. I think that was a problem at times, but generally, there he was, floating in all these different areas, popping up in all areas of the pitch. I mean, that's incredibly balanced. I mean, if you cut that pitch in half, you could almost do a mirror image of what his touches on the left hand side look like compared to his touches on the right. Clearly asked to get high in the pockets at times, sometimes support the wide areas, but have a real cluster in those central areas. Now, what I'm going to show you here, this time looking from left to right, we can see the player influence map for the first 24 minutes. That is the period that Bukayo Saka was on the pitch. So you've got the 11 players there, and what we can see is that Lewis Skelly is more in line with Partey, Havertz, Ødegaard, actually Gabby Jesus too, and Jurriën Timber. We've just listed 6 players there who are all kind of playing on a line, packing out the midfield, all able to pick up from Gabriel Saliba as well, all able to play off Partey, Ødegaard, and the creativity and the midfield control they can bring. But Saka and Martinelli significantly further up the pitch than all the other players, probably in a bid to be the outlets for Arsenal, be the players that can run in behind. But I think a big part of it was that we're packing out the midfield so much, is that a way for us to let our wingers and also our biggest goal scoring threats be higher and wider and in sort of more threatening areas, because you've got so many technicians there who can get on the ball, look after and try and control the game for Arsenal. And I thought that was really interesting. But Arsenal have tried to do this before. This, I've mentioned, we did it against Forest. So the first time that Arsenal and Arteta have gone for a system like this, but last time we did it very differently. Let me just find it here on the tactical pad. Right. So we've got the 4-3-3 here. Now this was on the opening day where Gabriel's left out the 11. Partey starts at right back. He went for Saliba and White as our two starting centre backs. Havertz is still in midfield on that left 8, so ultimately his movement into that position isn't too different, but the use of Rice and Partey and Timber is significantly different, because Arsenal moved up the pitch like this. Ben White, moved out to the right centre-back position with Saliba and Timber as the back 3. Rice, Partey and Ødegaard were the 3 behind Kai Havertz, and Martinelli and Nketiah and Saka led the line, of course, Ramsdale in goal. Now, what I find really difficult about this in particular, if we just take it back to the start, Partey is having to come a long way to basically sit in that 6 and get on the ball and play. It's one thing inverting a player when, say you want to invert Partey, Ødegaard moves forward, Havertz moves forward, and he tucks in. I mean, tucking in is a different, that's what Zinchenko's been doing from that side. It doesn't matter. Oh, okay, they're attacking down this side. Saka needs to get back, but Partey can come back to that position. I actually think when you're having to invert all the way into that 6th position, I just think that is a lot to ask of a player, of any player, not just Thomas Partey, of any player, to go from right back all the way into that 6th position. And like we mentioned, then Declan Rice has moved away from his 6th position into a left 8 position, which demands a lot of box-to-box running and supporting the left-hand side, a lot of channel running, a lot of sort of running in, making those underlaps and supporting Martinelli. And I just think that was asking a lot of the players. The other way that we showed earlier felt like a much more sensible, in fact, let's just bring it back up. Here we go. Felt like a much more sensible approach because, well, I mean, actually, I was just showing you the bit before, but because Partey essentially holds his position, Havertz moves up a little bit, and Lewis Skelly tucks in. Lewis Skelly is a midfielder, so he's really suited that position, and it works really, really well for him. Now, there are drawbacks to this system. I mean, for anyone asking, is this the long-term solution? Will we see this against Ipswich? There are drawbacks to this. Let me just show you the sort of XG map, or I'm not sure what we'd call this, but it comes from Canon Stats. What we can see here is how the XG went up for each side. And we can see that there were periods where we were trading blows with Crystal Palace on the XG front. We started the better, then their XG went up, and so they looked the more dangerous side. Then we got the goal, then they actually had some efforts and really probably should have made it 2-2 before we then sort of steamed ahead, getting the 3rd, 4th and 5th. And sort of wrestling control of that game. We were trading blows with Palace. There was a lot more chaos. There was a lot more frantic as a game because Kai Havertz wasn't able to drop deep enough to support Partey when we were caught in transition at times. I don't blame him. I don't blame Partey. It's just the nature of the system. As you can see here, look at the shots that we conceded to Palace, again, via Canon Stats. Some good opportunities in dangerous areas, right in and around the penalty area, or penalty spot, should I say. That is not something that Mikel Arteta, I think, will be particularly pleased with, but I think maybe he might have acknowledged that he was happy to concede, I don't know, some control, some chaos, because Arsenal have lacked a little bit of that excitement and fluidity. Think of the Everton game, for example. So maybe it was a calculated decision. Now, my biggest fear as well with all this, apart from the fact that it looks a little bit chaotic, and the 2 times we've done it, we haven't really won. Performance has been far from complete, although 5-1's obviously a very good win. I would say that I think another worry I've got about this is the Partey, Marino, Rice dynamic. Because I think if this is the system long term, and it's to move Havertz into that area of the pitch, well then Rice for me is in a battle with Partey, because I don't really see how... I don't see how Rice can find a way into that left 8. He's not going to invert from left back. You could ask Partey to invert from right back, but you've got White and Timber, so why would you leave them out of the team? And if you do that, if you do want to invert Partey from right back to do it, you're then asking him to do a lot of work to get there, like we mentioned, but then Gabriel's probably going to have to be the starting left back, which doesn't suit him at all out of possession. So I wouldn't know how you'd get them all in that team in that way. And Marino, you've just signed. I mean, look, maybe we're just going to mix up the tactics. Maybe we're going to have multiple ways of attacking sides, and maybe we're going to have multiple plans. Sometimes it will be the box midfield, sometimes it will be high and wide fullback, sometimes it will be this. And that's good. Arsenal should have multiple systems, multiple shapes, multiple plans. But I feel like this is an area that Arteta really wants to go for. Had Timber not got injured last season, he might have done it more. But this was certainly his way of trying to get Arsenal back to winning ways against Palace. So there'll be a temptation to stick for it for Ipswich, but I don't think he will. And this is my predicted 11 we went through on AFTV, me and Turkish. But it's Raya in goal with Timber, Saliba, Gabriel. I actually think Calafiori will come in for Lewis Skelly. I think Erdegaard, Partey and Rice will be the team, and Rice will play as that kind of box-to-box runner. Calafiori might move ahead of him in that left half space, with Jesus on the right and Saka's absence, Havertz up front and Martinelli on the left. That's the predicted 11 for me against Ipswich. Everyone, hope you've had a Merry Christmas. If you do celebrate, Happy New Year to everyone as well. I said it at the end of my last video, but just want to say it one more time. Big thank you to everyone for everything you've given us here on the Goonerverse and being a part of the Goonerverse family in 2024. It's been a great year and I'm excited for much more. So big thanks again, and we'll see you all very well. There'll be a match report, but of course we'll see you in 2025. More to come from the channel and from Arsenal. See you soon.